What's going on, guys? Welcome to another edition of Analytically Correct. Marty here with Jeff again, and Stretch is going to be on this one too. I kind of started last week. We're mostly always a sports podcast, and I started last week kind of. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another edition. Somewhat joking about that we were going to talk about everything that was going on, and then it became quickly apparent that it wasn't really. But we're not joking. We're going to talk about it today, pretty much. So the only link to sports, I think, is the only stuff that's happened recently with Drew Brees and Malcolm Jenkins and that. But other than that, if you're here for sports, we're pretty much talked about it in the group chat and said, and we were planning some Michael Jordan versus LeBron thing, but that's out the window now. Became quickly apparent, like I said, that this is something that everybody kind of needs to talk about, and we're all going to give our opinions on it. I'm going to just start by prefacing an obvious point that if you watch this podcast, you know I am white. So I'm going to only preface this one time by saying I understand that. And everything that I say is coming from a place of perspective, not that I know what certain groups of people are feeling right now, but as a person, I think I'm also allowed to be mad at everything that's going on right now. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I understand and I can understand anything about having these kind of things happen to me personally, but as a person, I'm not really cool with it either. And I want to put it out there that there are also a lot of good white people out there. That's not the most important message to come out of this whole thing. But if you're watching this and you're wondering, why should I listen to this guy? What the hell does he know? I'm on your side. I don't agree with any of this bullshit at all. And I think that's what it is. And I think we're just going to go around, and I think Stretch is even going to be in on this one. The show that the Dark Hour did on Tuesday or Monday, I think it was really good. There's some stuff that I did think that they missed as far as addressing the president. I know it was kind of like a purposeful point in maybe not giving him power or just thinking he's a piece of shit altogether, but I'm definitely going to address some of that stuff. And I can either start with Stretch or Jeff, whichever one of you guys wants to go first, and kind of just see where you want to start with this. I have so much different stuff that I want to say that we're gonna take some time and talk about all of it. But the most important stuff I wanted to make sure I didn't forget I wrote down. So whichever one of you guys wants to start first, whatever you wanted to open with.
Jeff, go ahead, please.
Oh. For me, this has been, like a lot of people, just a lot of raw emotions because, as I've said on the guy's podcast the other night, as well as to many friends, including Marty and other friends and minorities that I've known forever, I have dealt with two very specific situations dealing with law enforcement, and a bunch of small things that I think minorities deal with more often than I think people realize, in these subtle ways that sometimes you don't even mention to people. But it's these moments that bring them up, and yet I realize what I have experienced personally is a fraction of what my friends who are Black have dealt with, and even some of my friends who are Hispanic. And I am mixed. I'm white and Hispanic and Pacific Islander, but people, because of the uniqueness, I guess, of that combination, people mistake me for Asian. They mistake me for just straight, I've been called Mexican, Cuban, Indian. So even fairly recently asked what country I was from, and it makes you kind of just realize that, as I've said, I said to Marty, and I said on the, in the chat on the podcast the other night, was that this is, we got to stop talking about it, and there's got to be solutions. And we'll get into some of those things and my thoughts on that. But um, I'm one of those people. I'm not going to focus on the looting. I'm not going to focus on those people who are, are probably taking advantage of this situation. The reason we're here is because uh, I posted something on my Facebook page. Um, African American and Hispanic people are 4.5 times more likely to be killed by a cop than a white person is. That's just the reality of it. You don't have to make up stats. That's the reality. And
Not to jump you
so,
on that point, not to jump you on that point, but that's one of the things me and Stretch were talking about before is there's ways you can manipulate stats, and I've seen things pulled up on Facebook and other social media where people will pull up, oh, well, and I'm going to bring up all these other points because a lot of us are going to agree on most of all this stuff. So I want to bring up, I don't want to just sit in an echo chamber and all agree on how shitty everything is. I want to bring up other sides and other points that I don't agree with at all, but I think we need to create a back and forth without having somebody on here who's going to come on publicly and say these things. Well, maybe they'll say it in person, but they would never put it on record in social media. So one of the things when you said the 4.5 times more likely, you can find stats online where it's like, well, white people actually are killed more by cops, and
no, the number itself is more,
but not the
not
percentage
the
based on.
percentage per capita.
I want to make that clear.
And that doesn't include, by the way, other people of color. So it doesn't include, you know, uh, people of, that are Asian Americans. It doesn't include any other people of color other than those two demographics. So it's that wasn't a that's a per capita number. So it has to do with the amount of white people versus, African Americans and um, Hispanic people. So yeah, but there is, yeah. I guess if you wanted to get into the technical numbers, sure, there's more.
No, but I want to debunk some of the stuff that I've seen out there, whether it's like comment threads or this or that, where it's like you can have somebody put this stuff up there and try to make it seem like one way when it's the other way. And then I don't know if Stretch wanted to go, if you were done basically.
Yeah, no, that I'll get into the rest, but yeah, by all means.
I know for me, it's been like a roller coaster of emotions throughout the week, man. Because there's the angry part of the unjustified killing of this guy. It was blatantly murder, and then some of people who I'd look at like social media that were considered friends not being nowhere near as empathetic about it,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of trying to detract from it with statements about the rioting and the protesting. Like that's that's a symptom of of the bigger problem, which is the killing of unarmed black males and blacks in general. But I think one of the good things that has come about is that we're uniting as a world to try and combat it. You know, like there are people in Asia, in Europe, who are protesting because this is more of a human rights issue than anything else.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's um, and I think what you're finding, and maybe to me, what's continues and will continue to be troubling is that we are so divisive in this country that we have made right and wrong political, right? Like
Right.
everybody's trying to poke holes in things, and it's like, yeah, but okay, yeah, but and I purposely before we got on, as I was watching, and this isn't a secret to anybody, but going back and forth literally between one channel, CNN, and then Fox News, to see what the exact same story looks like on two different, obviously, media outlets, and probably, there's MSNBC, but the two biggest ones that people point to. I get tired honestly, of people blaming the media for stuff. Like to a degree, we're our own worst enemies. People, like, you're an adult, the information is out there more so than it's ever been. You when people like to call everybody a sheep, but like the information is out there. We're just lazy, and that has become to me really really dangerous in that people are just, to Marty's point, yeah, there is an echo chamber, and there's some danger in that. But at the end of the day, it is amazing to me, unfortunately, how many people went from silent and or yeah, this is bad, to you could see it just like everything with school shootings and everything. It becomes this, like, yeah, we're all on the same page, and then give it about 3 or 4 days and some shit happens, and all of a sudden people's true colors start to come out, right? And all of a sudden people start defending this president and his words and his divisiveness, and it's like, it is like clockwork. It is so just obvious how this is going to play out, and it's unfortunate and it sucks. And we can all sit and say, hey, I said to one of my buddies the other day, who Marty knows, and he's a firefighter, and he's dealing with some stuff that is, to me, I can't even get into it because it is what it is. But like, is you can't help but realize that it's racially motivated with some things he's dealing with right now, and he's one of the best people you would ever meet. And it's just like, this is where we're at. So the answer can't be anymore, you know what, we just need to march down the streets, and we need to, like, no, like, that time is long gone. It's long gone. And unfortunately, we have people in a leadership position at the highest level who have in no way, shape, or form, you can't even debate whether there's an attempt to bring people together. Like, I don't even see, and there's people who will, granted, but how you can even spin this as to say, I mean, he's threatening, he wants to bring actual military personnel to combat people as they protest. Like, this is crazy talk. This is absolutely crazy, and we're so divided that people are just gonna defend that idiot to the nth degree. I'm sorry, it's just, I'm done. It's not even about his politics. It's about what my leaders should represent, in my opinion.
To that point, and there's a million things that I want to say. I don't even know where to start first, but I think one of the things about this entire thing that makes me the most sad, I guess, is like the overall emotion for me. There's like anger at people who think they can do this with impunity, and one of the things we should have said is they actually did today bring charges against the other cops too. That was a development that happened today, and the first thing I thought wasn't, okay, good, that's the right thing to do. It's like, this would have helped a whole hell of a lot if it happened a week ago.
What took so long?
Right. Look at everything that had to happen for that to happen, and they upgraded the murder charge from a third degree felony to a second degree, and all this kind of stuff. But it's like, when that really would have helped is before all this shit happened.
I understand the third degree to second degree. I don't understand the other cops not getting charged, though.
Right. Well, they got charged today.
Right. Because one of the things I've said to people, when it happened in Orlando, so Casey Anthony got off because they went after her for first degree murder, which is premeditated in the simplest terms. Yeah. And third degree is essentially manslaughter. It's viewed as somewhat accidental, right, in the simplest terms. And then second is viewed as unintentional in a way, but like, there's clearly some history of violence and things that you can point to that would cause this to happen. So I understand you did that man has to go to jail, and whatever they think is going to be the way to get him behind bars, you can't fuck this up.
Forget what's going on right now. If that guy doesn't go to jail, like, I'm gonna start a fucking underground bunker or something. If that guy doesn't end up getting convicted, like, and you know, I talked to Alex at work. We have a guy that worked at CPK, and he lived in California in Los Angeles during when all those riots happened. And I went into work.
This was post Rodney King, by the way.
And I asked him, I was like, hey, just out of curiosity, like, what's worse, this or that? And I was expecting him to say that because like he was there and all, but he was like, it's this, and it's not even close because it's all over the place. That was only in one city.
It also this has gone on longer too, Marty, already.
Right. Yeah. Another thing that I wanted to say is one of the sadder parts is just that we're still here. There's been no progress. It seems like in however many years you want to go ahead and say, this is something that, other than social media being around, how is this any different than what happened with Rodney King? If not worse, because he actually ended up dead, and all the things that have happened since. It's so disheartening and demoralizing that everybody thinks like, oh, this generation's like the woke generation, everybody this and that, like I don't see race, I don't see color, and then this is still happening. I know it's getting, I have some kind of an optimism that as older people die off who are more racist than younger generations, but I mean those older people also have kids who they teach the same way. I'm hopeful that this generation cares more. One of the things to relate it back to sports in a little small way is when on the Levitard show they were commending Trevor Lawrence, who's like 20 or 21 years old, coming out with a statement about how, and Joe Burrow too, how young these guys are, and young white guys who are by all means going to be rich, and they're standing out here saying, no, this is bullshit. Like we don't stand by this. We're not for this at all. So maybe you didn't see that as much in other generations when you're talking about even guys like Jordan, or I mean things like that. It seems like more nowadays people are using the platforms that they have to kind of speak out. And I know Dak Prescott pledged to put $1 million towards police training, but then on the same kind of note, we were just talking about, did you see Drew Brees' comments?
Yep.
Made me kind of glad we waited till today.
Yeah. Maybe if you're Drew Brees, it's so easy to say the right thing at this point if you want to on a social media platform. But to come out and say that and be so like tone deaf and make it about yourself when he's talking about, if people don't know about the Drew Brees comments, he's basically talking about how he doesn't think it's ever okay to disrespect the flag, which we all can go in circles about. That's not what the protest that Kaepernick was about anyways. It was during the national anthem, which we can get into why is that even played at sporting events anyways. But the fact that he's not disrespecting the flag, he's disrespecting that it says land of the free, home of the brave, but there's a certain population that doesn't feel like they're free still. And then Drew Brees comes out and says, because my grandfathers fought in wars, I think it's disrespectful anytime anyone disrespects the flag, which again, that's not what the protests are about, is disrespecting the flag. It's just saying, hey, maybe stop killing us and shooting us when we're unarmed and this and that. And I was just thinking the whole time listening to the Drew Brees interview, you're talking about your grandparents, and then you hear Malcolm Floyd come on, and I was waiting for him to get to it, and he says, well, Malcolm Jenkins, and who the hell is Malcolm Floyd? I'm mixing two names. Wow, that's but he comes out and says, well, what about my grandparents? What were they doing during that time? So like, how do you come out and make this about yourself at that point? I don't understand.
I was shocked when I heard that. I was like, I would have never ever guessed that. And you're right. Like the term tone deaf can be applied to a lot of people right now. And
considering the fact he lives in New Orleans, which is about 65% black.
Exactly. And you saw, and he personally was part of the restoration of that city, knowing that they were waiting forever to get aid and to get water and to get anybody to come help them at the Superdome. And he was part of what was a great story from a sports standpoint, that they win the Super Bowl and all that stuff after, you know, that place was used as a shelter and people were dying, and it's like, yeah, that's crazy. You're exactly right. I couldn't believe
What
it.
I saw and what I would keep a close eye on is everything going on right now. People using social media platforms, coming out and talking. And what I was saying to Stretch, that is another reason to be optimistic, is you see how many of the protesters in Orlando and across the country are. It's not just like minorities, African American people, people of color. There's a lot of white people and other people out there who feel the same way, like that it's not just a issue of like color or this or that, it's a police brutality issue in general. And I saw one shirt, I think that was in the Orlando protest, that said white silence equals violence. So keep a close eye right now on people who, whether they come out or say something, at this point, if you're not coming out and saying something on one side, that means you're on the other side. Maybe you're afraid to say it on social media, or you just talk about it amongst your friends. But if you're not coming out in support, and I don't want to make one side versus another, but at this point, if you're not against police brutality and this kind of thing happening, then you're for it on some level, maybe subconsciously, maybe actually consciously. But if you can't even come out and say, hey, don't allow this stuff to continue, then that's like the very least thing you can do, whether you're going to donate or anything like that. The very least thing you can do is come out and voice support, in my opinion. One of the things I wanted to talk about as far as Trump goes, when you get to the tweets and everything like that, look the way he phrased things when it was white people in Michigan protesting that they wanted to get a fucking haircut, and they're bringing their assault rifles to the city capitol and stuff like that.
Those guys were patriots in his.
Right. He says they're good. There's plenty of good people. Maybe that the governor should make a deal with them and sit down and talk to them. And when people peacefully protest, and some people are looting or rioting or whatever, but that's a minority group of what people are actually doing. And when people do that, he says there's thugs that are dishonoring George Floyd's memory. So on one side, you have people who are peacefully protesting that are thugs and they're dishonoring a memory. On the other side is people with assault rifles that can't get a haircut or go out to eat or have to wear a mask, and they're good people and give them a chance. It's like,
imagine if those same people, under the same circumstances or similar circumstances, were out on the steps of any state capitol or city building with assault rifles, and they were not white.
well, we just saw what happened. You can be unarmed and not be white, and you
that's my point, right? And it's gotten to the point that if you couldn't even make this stuff up, that literally within weeks he goes from calling those people patriots and great for exercising your First Amendment rights, to calling people thugs, saying that anybody arrested should be, given 10 years in prison, and that we need, the governors and these guys are weak and they need to show more force, and law and order is the only thing that's going to get this. Like, we could say tone deaf with him, but like that's the understatement of the year.
Yeah, he knows exactly what he's doing. It would be so easy to come out and give a speech and say, this is a time when we need to come together as a country.
It's never happened, Marty. It has never happened that a time of civil unrest, that a president, any sitting president, has not come out, and at least, whether people wanted to hear it or not, has not made a statement to the nation to attempt to bring people together. It's never happened, and it's not going to happen, because he doesn't care about anybody but the people who agree with him, and that's always the way it's going to be. And his followers will, they'll ride over the cliff with this dude, and they will. We know they will.
And there's people who are, whether they just at this point don't want to admit they were wrong, or for whatever reason. And, at the same time, you can't let necessarily Joe Biden off the hook as an opponent. It's not like he's come out and inspired a nation at this point with some rousing.
Nobody's going to claim that, and he deserved every ounce of criticism for his interview with Charlemagne. Like it's
Absolutely.
he deserved to get wrecked for it. The difference is nobody is saying Joe Biden is perfect, and all I heard was criticism of him over that. I feel like Donald Trump says those things multiple times a day,
Yes.
and he is defended, or we've normalized it. We have normalized this notion of if anybody is critical of you or him as an individual, we can now dismiss them, and we use fake news and we do all of this stuff. And say what you will about the founding fathers, and yes, this country was founded on slavery, but they were also smart enough to understand the importance of checks and balances with the presidency, with public officials, so that you don't have stuff like this, that somebody can just go and dismiss the press over things that are against him or critical of him. Like, it is incredibly dangerous. And then we've set this precedent with individuals that they feel like, I can just say whatever, that's bullshit, that's fake news on any level, and it happens over and over again with a lot of people now.
That's what
It's
social
like you
media's
just didn't
become.
dismiss it because you don't agree with it.
And to the point too, when I saw something that was activists that were speaking, I think they were in like Carolina. Billy posted a watch party with it, and I watched the whole thing. And had Stephen Jackson, who was like one of George Floyd's best friends. It had Jamie Foxx was there, and a couple of other people. I don't know who the lady was, but she was talking before Stephen Jackson talked, and she's giving an awesome speech. And then a moment like caught me, and she said, as far as like us as, not me, but as Black people, we learned looting from you, from this country. We were looted from Africa. We were brought here. We learned violence from you. We learned looting from you. Where do you think we learned all of this stuff? And she's just making point after point about this is the history of this country. What happened to Native Americans? What happened to African Americans? All this kind of stuff. The country is built on this. And then when it comes to us pushing back and saying no more, like we're not taking this shit anymore, and then everyone's like, oh well, look at what they're doing now. And it's like that's the history of this country, literally. And then when another side does it, then they look at them and say, oh look, this is what they're doing, that's wrong. And I made the point to Stretch that I've heard from multiple people. It's like you can't tell people how to protest. That's not how a protest works. No. If you lay out point A, B, and C and say you can protest like this, this, and this, that's not.
But Marty, there is no acceptable options on that side of it.
Right. It's the thing. Like, well, stop doing violent protest. Be peaceful in protest. And then it has like the meme on Facebook everyone's seen, and it shows Kaepernick, and it's like not like that. Right. And it shows LeBron wearing the I Can't Breathe shirt. It's like no, not like that. Then it shows Beyonce. It's like no, not like that. It says in hip hop music, oh no, not like that. And then back to the point where it's so sad that we're in the same point. We have made zero progress, that this is still going on. That it was another person from the Lebitard show. It was like one of the board ops or one of the main like executive producers, Roy Bellamy. It's like the only Black guy on the show, and he was like in tears describing how he felt about it. And he said they replaced fire hoses and dogs with rubber bullets and tear gas, and we're in the same place as we were then, in just a different technology.
By the way, the esteemed leader also threatened to sick, dogs on the protesters too. So there was that. And all the other crazy things he's said.
He says when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Which I didn't know this because I'm not like a student of history, but apparently that goes back to like the 50s and 60s and stuff like that, where one of the other presidents said that as well. So when the looting starts, the shooting starts.
I don't think it was a president, like, Marty. I believe it was either a police official or a governor that said it, and it was basically about segregation.
But it had been said before in history.
Correct.
Like he didn't. It's so funny that he's a student of history in no other way than like the racist like bars, for lack of a better word. Like he knows all that kind of stuff, but he has learned nothing else from history. one of the other things that I kind of wanted to get to is to stay on the point, not talking about the protests or talking about the looting and this and that, but to keep the conversation on why all this stuff is happening. Well, other than like how do we keep it from being a week or a 2 week long thing and then going back to normal or whatever the hell normal is nowadays, and then it just happening again and us doing this conversation again? Like how does this time?
It's going to happen. Like, let's be honest, like that's going to happen
Right,
because
but in what way?
it's a systemic problem. Like, this isn't, like I said to you earlier, and I've said over and over this past week to people, this isn't something that gets fixed with kind words and high fives to each other. There has to be an honest conversation about accountability in law enforcement, about psychological testing in law enforcement over the course of a certain amount of time. If somebody is involved with a quote unquote really high stress situation, they fire their firearm, there better be psychological testing, and damn sure straight that anybody with that dude's record, that they do not get to go back and perform the functions of their job. Like that can't happen anymore.
19 citations. You were my general manager. If I had 19 guest complaints,
exactly.
Put it a different way. How many guest complaints would I have to get fired? Because I had one or two, and you gave me like a serious talking to each time. And you're like, well, this server has been here for this many years with no guest complaints. How come you have one or two or this or that? And whatever the situation was, you're like, well, you shouldn't have any. And then
this is what I said, even
police officer that's allowed to have 19.
Yeah, amongst other things, right? And there were other very questionable things that he was a part of during his tenure. But I said to somebody on a smaller level, so we worked in restaurants, and if there's guest issues and there's problems in the kitchen and things are just not going well, this would be the equivalent of your bosses going in and saying, hey, just do better, guys, and then walking out. Really, that's thanks, high five, let's go, right? That's what we're basically condoning. Every time we go through this, every time we go through a mass shooting, it's oh yeah, let's all do better, and we're in this together, and then we go about our day. That's literally what will happen again. What needs to happen is people holding every single political office, from the chief of police, the sheriff's department, your city council people, with their feet to the fire, and make sure that somebody is speaking to what needs to happen to make sure the systemic issues are being handled and are being addressed, and that there's going to be some things that are going to change. How would you change a restaurant? Well, you would change the leadership. You would make sure that the systems that were in place, if they needed to be tweaked, that you would tweak them, right? Like that. It makes all the sense in the world, but that hasn't and won't happen in law enforcement, in part because of the unionized part of it. In any union, it gets really difficult for people within the union to come out and speak out against them. And then you have all sorts of different scenarios where I've even heard people I know who went through law enforcement training and were like, they were literally reprimanded for trying to talk somebody down during their training. And they're like, what the fuck are you doing? And were reprimanded for it.
You want to talk about a disparity in encounters with the police, and I've heard some of the stuff that you've said, and Stretch, I think, has said. I've heard a couple things he said. You want to hear a disparity? I don't think I've ever told this story, maybe to anybody really before. And this is the disparity. And I've done, you know me, I've done all kinds of stupid shit in my life where I've come in contact with cops, and never once have I felt scared, even when I was in the wrong or I did this or I did that. There was, coming back from my freshman year in college, I was back for the summer, and the night before I was supposed to go back, I was driving when I shouldn't have been. I had been drinking, and I was dropping a friend off at home, and I pulled out, and instead of pulling, I was making a right, and instead of pulling directly into the first right lane, I pulled into the second one or the third one. You know, shit people do all the time, but if there's no cars coming, you're fine. And another car hits me going like 45 or 50 or something like that. So I get into a car accident, and I have a drink in the car at the time, and the cops come, and it was pretty clear everything happened, and normally, and this is just the disparity of the situation. Anyone's screwed in this situation. This is in South Florida, and the police called my mom. They gave her the option: you can either drive him home or we'll give him a DUI. Of course, my mom's not an idiot. Like, I'm not causing all this money that I'm going to wind up paying anyways. She takes me home. Like, what kind of a disparity in police encounters is that, where they gave my guardian the option, here, what do you want us to do? And then she just took me home. And this is at like 3 o'clock in the morning. And that's the difference, is stories like that compared to I'm trying to use a counterfeit $20 bill, or I'm in my own house like Breonna Taylor and I get shot, or this or that. And that's the disparity, I think, that is insane. And this is, I don't even know like how to express it, but stories like that where it's like, there's never been a time, like, this is the difference. There's never been a time when I don't ever get pulled over. I mean, I drive pretty safe anyways, but I think it's pretty clear that it doesn't always matter what you're doing if you're going to get pulled over or not, if you're not white. But there's never been a time that I've encountered a cop where I'm like, oh, I wonder if this is a dangerous scenario. And that's just the entire, for a lack of a better expression, the black and white of America.
And here's the thing, Marty. Like, if you ask any of your black friends, they all have at least, I would say, 1 to 2 stories of situations where it's like, why did it happen that way? Like, for me, it was about 15 years ago. I was driving through Georgia. This is Thanksgiving. It's me and my boy. We're speeding. We get pulled over for that. And the cop instantly is like, well, I smell weed. And anybody who knows me, I don't smoke pot, man. Like,
no,
never. You know what I mean? I was like, man, there's no pot in here. And he's like, well, I smell weed. I have probable cause. I'm searching this thing. So they take us out of our car and search, rip through our car, don't find anything. And then just say, well, carry on. Didn't help put anything back. No apologies.
Yeah.
Carry on, keep it moving.
Yeah, it's the anecdotal thing from like one of the Dave Chappelle stand-ups where, and it's meant as a joke, but I believe it that it was a true story, where he's with one of his white friends, and his white friend's drunk, and he's in the car and he's smoking, and his white friend's at a red light with another car, and he says, Dave, I'm gonna race him. And he looks over, he's like, well, sometimes you gotta race. So they pull off and they start racing and stuff like that. A cop pulls them over, and the cop comes up to the window and he says, you know what? And he's swerving all over the road, and he gets pulled over, and the cop comes up to the window. He's like, what the hell's going on here? And he's like, oh, sorry, officer. I didn't know I couldn't do that. And Dave Chappelle is just dumbfounded, because he's like, no black person would ever think to say that to a cop, because they know we know our laws. Every black person is a qualified paralegal and shit. And it was meant as an anecdote, but I believe that it was a true story in some sense. And I think a lot of people that he was illustrating in that joke, and that's what I was trying to do with my story, is what some people's experience is to what other people's experience is. And there's people now who are like, oh, well, I don't know if you saw what Brett posted on Facebook, but he's talking about Ryan P. when he was going up to game, and he's like, well, I had this view about it, and I thought all you had to do was just respect the police and say yes sir, no sir, and then nothing would happen. And it's like, no, that's not really how it works.
I told you about my situation, right?
Was it in the store that you were talking about, that you're getting followed, or?
No. I mean, that's happened to a lot of people, but so my 2 specific bad situations also had my car searched. Ended up getting arrested because I got mouthy with the cop. Essentially, he followed me. I was in a rental car at the time because my car had just been stolen. He follows me a good 2 miles as I'm leaving. I had left work, so it was a little bit late. He puts his lights on. He had seen me get out of my car. I had gotten out of my car because, like a lot of areas, there is a row of dealerships, but they're all blocked off, right? You can't get into them. So as somebody who just got their car stolen, I'm like peeking at a couple cars, but not going onto the lot. So this dude had actually followed me to watch and clearly saw that I didn't go in anywhere. So he follows me some more. As I pull into my complex, he turns his lights on, comes over and says, what were you doing? And I told him exactly what happened. My car was stolen. This is a rental car. And I was just peeking at just a couple cars. I pulled over on my way home and just was like peeking at them. I was like, you obviously saw me that I didn't go past the barricade. And he was like, so this isn't your car? No, sir, it's not my car. I just told you it's a rental car. And he was like, um, if I search your car now, am I going to find anything? And I said, why do you need to search my car? And he goes, well, I just saw you over at these dealerships being suspicious, and I have reason to search your car. And I said, no, you don't. And he was like, well, what do you have to hide? And I then said, fine, search my fucking car, dude. So he searches my car, obviously doesn't find anything. I get back in the car, he runs all my stuff, and I sat there for another 25 minutes while this dude was doing God knows what. I get out of the car finally, and I'm like, excuse me, can you tell me what the hell's going on? He's like, I told you to get back in the car. I was like, you need to tell me if I'm being charged for something, why I'm here. I've told you exactly what's going on. And then he arrested me. I got taken to and booked and never actually charged with anything. They then released me, and this dude forgot to turn in my keys. So then I had to wait outside my house till the sun came up for this asshole to come back and throw my keys to me. And he's like, good luck with everything, and got back in his car.
And the thing too, when Stretch was saying, like, if you know him, like, he'd never do anything like that. Like, if you know Jeff, he's like the last guy that's going to break the law at all. And it doesn't matter.
And then the other one was formerly at Confines, formerly Friendly Confines for, those of us who've been in Orlando any amount of time, we know that was like the place for hospitality people to go. And I was the one breaking up a disagreement / altercation with somebody I knew, somebody we worked with. And the cop comes up to me amongst 20 people. There was like witnesses and people still bring it up to this day, and comes up to me and says, get your hands out of your pockets. And I'm like looking around like, what is going on? Singled me out, threatens to arrest me, has his hand on his holster this whole time. And I'm like, you're fucking kidding me right now. And I said something smart ass to him. I said, I didn't know it was illegal to have your hands in your pockets in Waterford Lakes. And he was like, say one more smart thing and I'm going to arrest you. And this was a mixture of people out there. So it wasn't just a bunch of white people and then
Confines.
It's Confines, right? So like there was plenty of people out there of all sorts, but for whatever reason he picked me out, and I don't know why to this day. But there was about 20 some people whose jaws were dropped as I was interacting with this cop, trying to understand why he picked me out of the crowd to then just start harassing me. And finally the manager of Confines came out and she was like, wait. She was like, he was the one who just helped this situation. And then the cop, like somebody else came, and then there was a little bit of, conversation, and then they went and left. But the whole time this dude was eyeing me, he was giving me shit the whole time, and I still don't have any clue why.
But those stories are too common. The George Floyd story is too common. All of these stories are too common. And that's why I wanted to tell my story as like a disparity of what, because you're not going to hear a lot of people like the story I told, like, oh yeah, I had this interaction with the cops. And that's why a lot of people who are white or looked at as non-threatening don't understand why it's like, oh, you can't just say yes sir, no sir, and move along. Like, no, I've never been pulled over for no reason. Anytime I had an interaction with a cop, guess what? I was doing some stupid shit probably. And I most likely, if I wasn't white, would have been arrested a lot of the times.
It's such a bullshit. Can I say, Mark? It is such a bullshit response, because you know me, I am very calm under really adverse situations, but I do have a problem with somebody throwing their weight around. And when you ask a question, when you know what your rights are, like, when are you allowed to be pissed off about it, right? It can't just be this absolute, I have to obey every single thing you said and not question anything you say. That's just categorically wrong. Like it is, and I had trouble with that. Like even that night in those two incidences, one time I got arrested, the other one, he threatened to arrest me, but I didn't actually do anything wrong either time. That's the crazy part. So when are you allowed, like the notion of just like, hey, the argument of, you should do exactly what the cops say, and da, da, da. Wait a second, what about your rights as a human being, as an American citizen, to say, wait a second, you have to have a reason to go through my car, right? You have to, there has to be a reason other than what, you suspecting something, yeah, like, or the color of somebody's skin or whatever. Like there's got to be more than that, because that's what the law says.
It sounds shitty to say, but we're nowhere near that point where you can start asserting your rights and shit like that.
No, of course you can't.
I just watched a documentary on Netflix about Jeffrey Epstein, and he's sitting in, it's a deposition, so it's not like a confrontational situation on the street, but he's sitting there asserting and talking about soliciting like underage girls for prostitutes millions of times, and he's sitting there asserting his Fifth Amendment, 14th Amendment, all these amendments and shit, and he's sitting there under the privilege of the law. And then he pretty much, if you guys haven't seen it, he pretty much bought the Palm Beach Police Department because he was just a billionaire, quadrillionaire, whatever it is. And I was thinking, when I watched that, and I was thinking about this, can you imagine if somebody used that amount of money instead of buying a police department to be able to have an underage, pretty much sex Ponzi scheme? If somebody used that much money and influence to influence a police department into doing the right thing, where like I said earlier about Dak Prescott pledging $1 million and all this kind of stuff, and people doing all this stuff, if people in the right positions start putting their money and their influence into positive things, which is another point I wanted to transition to with this conversation, is we can talk till we're blue in the face about why this is wrong. We all know it's wrong and this and that, but there needs to be something to come out of it, otherwise, other than everyone just getting outraged and saying we need to vote. Well, everybody knows we already need to vote. If that
so can I ask you what the answer is then, in your opinion?
From some of the
it's not celebrities donating money to causes.
No. I was just making a point based off of a negative thing that I watched that could have been a positive. If somebody is using their influence for positive, it's not just donating money. It's not going on Facebook or on here and just saying this stuff is wrong or saying we need to go vote. We need specific solutions, as far as maybe civilian review boards for police. I said on the other podcast the other night, it's way too easy to become a cop. When you were talking about, well, we need psychiatric evaluations, and if these guys are in situations where it's threatening, they're going to use their gun automatically. I don't think that the guy who killed George Floyd was in a threatening situation, and that's why he did what he did. I think he did what he did because he knew or he thought that he could get away with it. I don't think that if he would have been psychiatrically evaluated, this would have been avoided.
No, but maybe it would have, because what I'm suggesting is that PTSD is becoming a thing that we're more understanding of, and that it covers a lot of different situations. And I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility that somebody in a police force after many years has PTSD. I don't think that's crazy to say. Well, why? There's a concern though, if that person continues to under those potential psychological issues continue to be in law enforcement. That's what I'm saying, is that if you how have they identified people that potentially have, because they've been in the force so long, that maybe do have PTSD? Who knows? But
here's the thing too, though, Jeff. PTSD usually relate that to what? Like military, right?
Sure.
When you get PTSD in the military, they do those psychological evaluations
exactly
and therapy to help them get through it, and you're not serving while you have that.
Exactly.
But at the same time, you're talking about psychiatric evaluations to get into the police force. what about having 19 citations against you and still being in the police force? So clearly,
Agreed, Marty. Agreed completely. What I'm suggesting is there's layers to this. There needs to be psych evaluation, not just at the beginning, but throughout the process, maybe twice a year for every single person that is in law enforcement. I don't know what the exact number is, but make it happen. I also think it is crystal clear because he's not the first person, the first police officer that has had other issue, quote unquote, issues in his past. Those people need to be held accountable, and they're not. They're simply not. And it's that, for lack of a better term, the good old boy network that that goes through some of these public service jobs, and the law enforcement is another one. And you have situations like, I painted a picture to somebody because I'd heard this from somebody, where you go, I've been on the force for 2 years. I'm kind of new. I still feel like law enforcement can do really good things and make a positive impact. And I'm with the old guy who, has been on the force for 25 years, and he knows the captain, and he knows some other, city council members, and he's been in the community forever, and everybody knows this dude, right? But we're together, and I clearly see him do something out of bounds. What is the likelihood, no matter who you are, especially because they're unionized and you have that set of circumstances I just laid out, who's going to say anything? And they have it set up now where you go, why would I? Because you're probably just going to get backlash.
You're probably going to lose your
That's the
job.
way it works. What's that?
You're probably going to lose your job.
Yeah, exactly. So this is again systemic. This isn't, and to my point about the official, public officials and voting, yeah, it sounds like the easy way out. But the only way these things get implemented, Marty, is that we have to find the people who are, this is part of their platform. This is something that they get elected on, and then we hold their feet to the fire and say, wait, where was this? We haven't heard this conversation. All right, next person. Like, we need to get people in there that are going to do fucking something, period. Like, and I don't care if and that's not Republican, Democrat. I don't give a damn. Like, get some people in there who are going to get really smart people that understand psychological situations, law enforcement, city officials, figure it all out, and get people in a room and go, this needs to be a blanket thing over law enforcement as a whole. I don't think it's a massive undertaking. They do it in industries all the time. Make it happen.
A couple of things. So you have to be in a 4-year college program to get your teaching degree to be a third grade elementary school teacher, but you can become a cop in like 18 months. I don't know what the actual math
6
on it is,
months.
but yeah, it's not. So to be able to teach kids how to do like 4+8, you have to be in school for 4 years to deal with children. But to be a cop, you can be 6 months out of high school. Maybe you're getting bullied in high school or whatever the situation may be. And like I said on the Monday podcast, in one of my comments, it's way too easy to become a police officer. And a lot of people, I think, try to go into it with the wrong idea that when I become a police officer, I'm going to get respect. And when you go out on the streets thinking because I'm a cop, I deserve respect just because I have this badge, it's looking for conflict where there is none. And the second that you meet any kind of resistance, whether it's perceived or otherwise, you're going to look for the way to throw your weight around, like you said earlier. Another thing I think is that, like I said earlier, it sounds kind of like morbid or whatever, but eventually older generations, as fucked up as things are now, we're doing somewhat of a better job of younger people caring more, whether it's on social media, doing whatever little part you can, or people actually caring. I don't think that our parents' generation did, and I'm talking about my parents in particular, or any white people's parents, that did a great job of pushing the issue forward. It's going to take white people and other non-minorities or majority groups or whatever to actually care about this for anything to actually get done. and other than just voting and getting policies changed and this and that, people have to not hate other people for only one reason, and that being race or how people look or what they're perceived. Because I guarantee you, there's people all around who are like, I think it was Van Smith that said like, oh, there's like white suburban liberals that say, I don't see race, I'm not threatened by this or that, but the second that anything threatens their personal safety like they perceive it, they're going to weaponize race and call it.
The woman in New York was a liberal who had donated to President Obama's reelection fund campaign.
Yeah, it's made me think a lot about myself.
That tells you everything you need to know. Nobody should think that because somebody's liberal or a Democrat that they're not racist, because that's simply not true.
It's made me think a lot about myself, and the premise that white privilege is something that even if you think you're a progressive, white, liberal, whatever, maybe you want to be on the right side of things, but maybe there's things you're doing that you don't even realize.
Have you guys ever, and I felt this more in North Carolina, and again, some of it may just be, it may be North Carolina, it also may be just the sign of the times and normalizing certain thought processes, where you get somebody who says, I mean, I'm not racist, but blah, 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 right? Like, I've heard that kind of iteration of words like far too often lately, where I'm like, you don't even understand you're a racist. Like, Stretch, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
I know exactly what you're saying.
I think there are people who have convinced themselves, because I'm not wearing a hood and I'm not burning crosses in front of people, that makes me not a racist. Well, no.
I might have said this to Stretch before. There might have been a time where I said something to Stretch where it's like, I'm not a racist, but, and maybe it wasn't about this group or that group, but I've said it before, you know, working in restaurants, shit happens. And I think what I need to start saying is, I'm not racist, but I hate people that don't tip, whether it's any group. It could be anybody. Maybe only people I hate are people that don't tip. And it's not anything to do with race or this or that. But anytime anybody starts a sentence with, I'm not racist, and I get uncomfortable about it. And it's not in the same sense that I'm one of the cops that's standing there watching George Floyd get killed. But maybe white people say things around me they don't say around you guys. And they think that because I'm white, I'll agree with it or whatever. And maybe I'll stand there and listen to it and not say anything back to them to avoid a conflict. But on some level, is that me being complicit in the issue? And I don't think of myself like that. I try to not be like that at all.
But they frame it, it's framed in a way that they try and make it, oh no, this is more about just, I want people, you know, when it comes to immigration or something, I just want people to you know,
do it the right way.
Do it the right way and follow the rules. But that's not how you framed it. Like, you know, I won't even get into specifics of the things that have been said to me or I've overheard people saying, where I'm like, what you just said is categorically racist.
Right. Like the immigration policy that everyone talks about only seems to apply that way when it's brown people. I don't see anybody having any complaints about people here from like Norway, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or Sweden.
Well, and clearly demonizing, you know, Mexican people. We heard Trump say it, I mean, over and over. It's like a soundbite. It's like, you know, they're not bringing in their good people, which, again, you ever worked in a restaurant, like, you know how ridiculous a statement that is, but they're bringing in their rapists and their drug, you know.
Yeah, they're bringing in their worst.
They're right. And that's what you just said is in fact racially driven, and thus to me a racist statement, because it's just categorically incorrect. And if you have even half a brain and you're even half aware, you would understand the jobs and the things that people do that are immigrants that frankly white people don't want to do, and they don't want to do it for the amount that brown people get paid to do it. And that has always been the case. The pickers of your avocados and your pistachios and the dishwasher at your favorite restaurant or the saute cook or the guy on the grill or the guy who does your lawn, right? Yeah, all the white people signing up to do those jobs.
Well,
Okay.
bring it back to sports in a small sense. And one of my favorite movies of all time. You can watch it back then. You can watch it now. You can watch it 20 years from now, and it's never been more like poignant or prescient than now. Is Remember the Titans. And I'm not
Marty,
even.
I'm gonna call yes, but there are some questionable things like that wouldn't fly in a movie these days. But go ahead.
Right, but well, we can get into that if you want. But
No,
my
no,
point,
I'm
my
just
point is, my point is, what could you say better right now as a quote than "attitude reflects leadership."
yeah.
The attitude of the country reflects the leadership of the country. I heard an analogy, and I just bring everything back to sports. Not even trying to do it just because of this podcast, but that's just how I think about everything. That's how I got the job at CPK. Is just you're doing the group interview, and you said, "What do you think about working in a restaurant?" Like, it's a lot like a sports team. I said everything about sports. Like, yeah, we'll hire this guy. but
Because
but
somebody told you to say that, right? That if
no, I saw you guys wearing an FSU shirt, and I was smart
uh,
enough to know that it's me and like 11 other UCF age girls. I got to do something to stand out. That's not my looks, obviously, clearly. But I heard another analogy that America right now is like a sports team with a terrible coach. Like as far as the pandemic goes, and as far as all the racial unrest goes, we have really good scientists. We have really good infrastructure. We have all this stuff. We have good players, but the coach is not utilizing them in the correct way. Whether it's his response to the pandemic or his response to this, we have the people around here to do things the right way, and the coach is leading the team in the wrong direction.
So America's the Wizards.
So Trump is Scott Brooks. That's what you're saying. I would say America would be the Thunder. As young as we are as a country, which sounds weird to say, but compared to other countries, as young as we are as a country, we made it to the finals. You know, we thought we were doing good. We were going to be there for a while. And then all of a sudden, Scott Brooks is Scott Brooks. And then we went, I don't know what the equivalent for America would be of trading Harden instead of Ibaka.
I was trying to think of this tonight, and I was like, I have never in my lifetime witnessed a person who is in fact supposed to be a leader who is purposely more divisive than that guy is. Like, and in a weird way, like it's funny to me because people try and paint it as this picture like, oh, you're just upset because you guys lost. No, I'm old enough now to have been part of elections that I didn't vote for the person who won. Like, and I never woke up the next day like I did after Trump was elected and literally felt sick to my stomach and felt like depressed. The entire day I was depressed.
It would be like if instead of Coach Boone, we got Coach Tyrell, who was allowed to be the special teams coach, but he was intent on dividing the team instead of bringing them together. And instead of winning on some miraculous backside George reverse, we just lost to the Hayfield Hawks in the first game. Not that I've watched this movie a million times, but what were your issues with the movie, by the way? I don't know. What was this?
What I wouldn't happen in a movie, if Remember the Titans was made now, there are some parts where they're kind of alluding, calling him Sunshine, and like kind of.
That's the least of our problems right now.
I'm not saying it is. I was simply saying the movie, I feel like would probably be made slightly differently than it was then, and that movie isn't even that old, So I get it. That's all.
Yeah, and when Denzel Washington goes in to meet with the team, and one of the coaches is like, "Why aren't you out there hollering with all your friends?" And it's like, how can, like I said, how we've come not far at all from time, and that movie was set in whatever time it was set in.
70s,
Yep,
Virginia.
70s.
And he says, "Why aren't you out there hollering with all your friends?" And then because Coach Yost has the audacity, not to make it a Remember the Titans podcast, which I could do any day of the week, but that Coach Yost has the audacity just to even like give this guy a chance. You just lost your shot at the Hall of Fame. I mean, other than the sunshine thing, if you're gonna have one indictment in that movie, it's when Bertier goes to the sideline. He says, "I don't want them to gain another yard," and Bertier goes to the sideline and points at the coach like this.
Yeah,
That is the indictment, not the sunshine part. I mean,
that's fair.
Sunshine's a Californian. I mean, he's a Californian.
That's fair.
What other stuff I want to get into? It seems like Black Lives Matter has been kind of a part of this, but it seems like it was created so long ago that it's almost like there's things that are going on now that are different than that. But one of the things I saw on social media that was a good comparison for people who want to say all lives matter is saying all lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter is like a house in your neighborhood is on fire and the fire department is spraying that house and you say all houses matter. So they start spraying all the houses that aren't even on fire. And you're like, all houses do matter, but your house isn't on fucking fire.
It's a great analogy.
You also can't say all lives matter without saying Black Lives Matter. It's like those people who want to say, and like I said, white people say things to me that they probably don't say to you guys. Like, why is there not a White History Month? Why is there not a white entertainment television? Like,
because all up until fairly recently, all television was white entertainment.
Pretty much.
Right. Yes. And it's I'll tell you it seems pretty easy to be on the right side of history right now, but I'm sure it seemed like that a long time ago too. And just some of the things that people say, or even sometimes silence speaks louder than words when people don't say on social media are crazy. This is another anecdotal story. I was at CPK the other day, and I went outside. It was in the switch between AM and PM, and I was a little late greeting a table, and they were on the patio, and it was a black family. It was like a mom and a wife and a daughter that was probably like 12 or something. There's another guy out there wearing a shirt that says, I am Trayvon Martin, and he has like a drink in his hand. I'm like, okay, so not to be racist, but they're probably all together. Like, this guy's talking to these people like he knows them. So I go up and I greet the table, and the guy walks away. And then I go inside, and I come back out with the drinks and the bread. And he's like, oh, did they order already? And I'm like, yeah, they just ordered. So he goes back out and starts talking to them again. And then he comes back in. He's like, oh, thanks, bye. And then come to find out the next day, one of the managers talks to me and said, hey, what happened the other day? And I was like, I don't even have any idea what you're talking about. I've been working 7 days in a row. 4 of them were doubles. I've had millions of tables. Like, this black guy outside said that you were being racist to him and you interrupted him and you did all this other stuff. And I was like, is this like a joke or something? But with everything going on right now, I didn't consider it like a joke or anything. But yeah, he came in and he talked to Carly and he said, you interrupted him and you were like being a racist and this and that. And meanwhile, the guy didn't say 2 words to me while I was there. And I'm like, well, I have no idea. Like, I'm working in a restaurant and I go and greet a table, and then there's a guy coming in at like 3 p.m. on a Monday drinking vodka and orange juice, talking to random tables on the patio. One of us is the person doing their job here, and the other person is the other guy. And they're like, oh yeah. And then the next day he's like, oh, he came in and he asked when the next time you were working, and he wanted to talk to you man to man. And he said, if not, you can go outside and handle it like men. And so now I'm going into work and I'm like, what the fuck is this guy going to come in here? And I'm like, I understand with everything going on right now, but the one message I would say is, like, not everybody out there is against you. Least of all me. And a lot of people are sympathetic to what's going on right now, but to just go out and try to cause an issue like that in a place where I work and then call and ask 2 days in a row when I'm working next and what my work schedule is and this and that, and anybody who knows me, and I'm not racist, but it's the thing that it's kind of like when you're in a mental hospital and you try to say you're not crazy, like it automatically makes you seem crazy. But I mean, that's how I feel. Like, what is this guy trying to do at this point? Like, try to start some issue that's not even there. And then meanwhile, before I know this, I got the table like a birthday dessert at the end of the day, and I wasn't like, hey, this is because of everything that's going on right now. But I was like, hey, maybe this is like a nice thing to do and they couldn't have been nicer. They tipped me 20 on 50. So like the family had no issue with it. And then just this random guy going in and talking to tables and shit like that.
He
It was
wasn't
like,
associated with anybody.
no, he didn't even buy food. He came in and he got drinks and he was just talking to a random table on the patio. So there's like, I mean, don't just go out there and assume that everybody is against you. Is the only thing I would say. And for my only interaction with him was to say 2 words, and for him to call me a racist is just because of how I look, I guess. And then at the same time, maybe black people would say, well, we've been judged like this for years just for how we look. So
It's true.
I started parking my car right outside the door from work. So I'm like, oh, is this guy going to follow me after work? That was the first time ever. And I'm like, wow, well, maybe this is how the other side feels when people just judge them for how they look and all this kind of stuff. And that was just some little story or whatever. I'm fine. Obviously, I wasn't anything worried about anything, but I just found it.
I have a question for you guys that I was thinking about a couple hours ago, and it occurred to me. I was like, through this and through maybe other things, but especially now, I have witnessed more people, like people who are related, people who are friends, literally telling each other, fuck you, I don't care if I talk to you again. Like I've never seen before ever. Like it's and truth be told, it's not typically about a specific topic because now everything is politicized, whether it should be or not, because of the president. So in a way, it comes back to how people feel about him. But have you guys noticed that too, where it's just like, when could you ever point to anybody causing divorces, causing friendships? I personally have ended 2 legitimate friendships of over 10 years just in the past couple weeks.
I don't think it's a bad thing.
You guys, I don't know. Do you guys have any stories like that?
Well,
Yeah.
so the only thing I do is go on Facebook for is to post this podcast, and I don't really. Only recently have I got into like reading people's comments and stuff like that, just because I want to see what the other side is saying. Like, I don't want to be in an echo chamber. Not that I'm ever going to take the other side on this whole thing and this argument, but I want to know why. Like, I don't want to just sit here and be like, oh, they're idiots. I want to see, why do these people think the way they think, and what do they think?
Right. I'm with you on that,
Like-
Marty. Like, I haven't deleted anybody, but some friendships have definitely changed. People, I look at them differently now. You know, and some people
Well,
say it takes crisis to really expose the type of person somebody really can be. Like, it started with COVID when everybody went on lockdown and you started seeing people act a little bit different. But then this is like that to the extreme, where it's like people just, they can't help themselves.
Right. You can't help but show your true colors.
Right.
Sure. So this is what I equate certain aspects of my conversations with some of the people I was referring to in my personal life, that I kind of feel like I've gotten to a point where I don't personally know any flat earthers, but if I got into a debate with them about something and they said they said the earth's flat, where do you go with it? You know what I mean? Like, that's not an echo chamber type of thing. So for me, if you tell me I don't think the president lies, I don't know where to go with that. Like, it's, to me, it's like the equivalent of a flat earther saying the earth is flat, right? Like,
And not even willing to debate it at all.
Right. It is that crazy a statement to me that would be echoed by anybody.
Like
And I've
LeBron
met
or
a flat
Jordan.
earther.
What's that?
I've met a flat earther.
Have you really?
Yes.
You know
What is-
Kyrie?
What is that like? I know we're talking about other stuff, but quickly, can you tell me, like, are you friends with them?
No, this was kind of a random.
It was just somebody you met.
He was a friend of a friend.
Okay.
So yeah, I can't be friends with no flat earther personally. I can't. I'm sorry. Like, it's
Okay, so that,
ridiculous.
I guess that's my point. So to me, it's not dismissing people who have different political views or view the president differently. There are certain things, though, if you defend every iota of what he says and what he stands for, and take his words and manipulate them into something else, and then, like I said, follow that up with, I think he just loves all Americans, and I don't think he lies. He just slightly exaggerates. That is the equivalent to me of flat earther.
Well, this is another part of it too,
Politically.
and this makes it either less or more disturbing. To me, it makes it more disturbing. I don't think that he thinks he's lying.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that he believes, like, I think the people who are even worse than him are the people around him who know better, who are not like sociopaths or narcissists or insane. Like the
Well,
other
we see those people, and it's why they either get fired or they quit, right?
No,
The people,
well, not even that. I'm talking about the other people in the leadership on that side of the party, where
oh,
it's like they're smart enough to know that this is all bullshit, but he has such a strong hold on the party that they're not going to go against it for fear of not being reelected.
sure.
But there are people in
What
the
is-
party who
what-
spoke out against it. James Mattis
Is it?
just spoke out today,
Yes, today.
completely denounced him.
Yeah. So we should get like a response from Trump probably at 2 or 3 o'clock tonight with his Twitter, and probably saying that's why he was fired and he did a terrible job, and his normal playbook. But like, what is it in this outside of like outright like racist statement or something crazy? Is there anything politically that would cause you to sever ties with somebody that you've known?
They'd have to be like blatantly racist.
Okay. So everything else you're fine with. You just go, okay, I just disagree with you.
There's people now where people who bring up the looting, it's like if that's the first thing you're bringing up, I can see. Like I said, silence right now means a lot more than speak. Like there's going to be a lot more people right now who are silent on the issue, who are not going to come out and specifically say on Facebook like, why are people doing this? And I think you can see people who aren't saying anything, and not that you have to go out and do a podcast about it or post a bunch of stuff on social media or post a black square on Instagram. But if you're not saying anything, it almost says more than like what Bill Burr, one of my favorite comedians, says something that's pretty funny and also true about like racism in movies. It's like racism is not overt. Racism is like in the shadows. Like nobody comes out and starts saying all this shit. It's like whispered in back rooms, and like I said, when people say things to me they probably don't say to you guys. Nobody's gonna say these kind of things out in public on unless they're totally insane. Like you have these people on Facebook and all this kind of stuff where you can't take it enough into consideration where a lot of stuff is like bots. But if it's people you specifically know, like how many people do you specifically know that have come out and said like, this is bullshit, why are people rioting and protesting and stuff like that?
A few.
Yeah.
Which I don't, like I said, I don't really go on Facebook that much, but I don't think a lot of the people who I know or associate with would even be on that side, which gets back to the echo chamber thing. But yeah, I mean, I've even had not issues, but like both of my parents voted for Trump, and I think that they're both on the side now that I hoped early on that a lot of people were on that side where what has to happen for this guy to do where people change their mind. And I think both of my parents have changed their mind at this point. Like what we can't have is another issue where it's like, well, Trump sucks, but Hillary also sucks. Well, Trump sucks, but Biden also sucks. It's like, no, it's not about Biden. It's about not Trump.
It's gonna not.
It can't be. It can't be.
No, I was gonna say real quick that it's you're 100% right, and that's kind of where I think a lot of people are. But the real quick presidential election thought process is what everybody has to understand, if they don't already, is it comes down to about 6 or 7 states and about 5% of the people in those states, because the always Trumpers, like they're voting for Trump no matter what he does from here on out. Like that's the reality. 43% of those people, like they're ride or die, and then there's another probably 45, 46% on the other side that there's no chance in hell they're voting for him. Period. Point blank. There is 5% roughly in about 6, 7 states that are going to decide who the next president is. That's the way it is. Technically, Joe Biden has 211 electoral votes already locked up. That's the reality.
Well, that's what
And
I was talking
you
to
can go
somebody
do the
at work.
math yourself.
I was talking to somebody at work today, and like I was talking to somebody at work about one side, and he was talking to them about the other side. Which it is funny too how fast Republicans are now willing to take unemployment and not try to make too much money at work so they can stay on unemployment. It's funny how now you don't want to go back to work and you want to keep this unemployment money, but when you thought other people were doing it, they were lazy or whatever dog whistle words you want to use. And then another person came in and said, I just don't care about politics. I don't really care at all. And I was like, well, that's just as bad as being on the wrong side. You can't not care.
This
Like,
is how Trump got elected in the first place. Because there were so many people that were so disgusted with both parties that they just didn't vote.
And this is the absolute truth. And I've said this to plenty of my black friends who did not vote and voted for Barack Obama. I told them flat out, you're part of the reason, because I don't know the exact number. He won 4 or 5 swing states by an incredibly small percentage, like 1%. And people, if this didn't wake people up to vote at the very least in November, then nothing will, in my opinion. People better mobilize. They better get out, because the numbers are what they are. If minorities and young people vote, he doesn't win. It's as simple as that. It is literally as simple as that.
You can only rig the game so much as far as like voter suppression and gerrymandering and everything like that.
Yeah, there's no chance he wins if there is a massive turnout of those three groups. There's no way he wins.
You can't really gerrymander the general election as far as states go. Like you're not doing counties and stuff like that. But I was gonna say I almost respect somebody more who votes for Trump than somebody who doesn't vote at all, because at least you believe in something, whether it's the wrong thing in my opinion or not.
I can agree with that.
But if you're gonna sit there and say, I don't really care, it's like, how low down I am on the economic level to where a lot of the stuff that Trump has done doesn't really affect me. It doesn't affect the money I make. But just out of a general decency standpoint of how you feel about women, minorities, and this is coming from somebody who's in a group who should theoretically be like the one who wants Trump because he's on their side. But just as a person, as human decency, as somebody who has stepsisters, everybody has a mom, or everybody has friends who are either minorities or this or that. I don't want somebody who's going to represent the country that everybody else in the world thinks is a joke, and everybody else thinks is like. And I've said it before with Trump. As much as everybody says they hate him, and he lost the actual popular vote, this is the president we deserve. This is who represents what America is right now, and it's a shame that we got Biden as the opponent, because it couldn't be a more like milquetoast, like non-inspiring guy. But it's not about somebody inspiring everybody. It's let's just be done with this. Let's get back to
prediction is, we know he's going to pick a woman for his vice presidential running mate. There is no chance, in my opinion, that he doesn't pick a minority. There's no chance. And there's probably a reasonable chance he picks Camilla.
Well, at this point with the Minnesota thing, I wouldn't be surprised if he picked Klobuchar.
I don't think so. It's going to be a minority. That's like, we'll time. I mean, it's going to be soon, relatively soon. He's going to have to pick somebody. But yeah, I think it's going to be minority woman. Well, we know it's going to be a woman. So it's going to be a minority.
Yeah, and like I said, it's not like things are going to change overnight. But what would be nice is for those people who don't care, can we get back to a president that people don't care about? Can we have?
The thing is, though, Biden's got to stop pandering. He's basically doing the same thing that Hillary did. You don't have to pander to get the black vote, bro. It's just be yourself.
Yeah.
I didn't care that Hillary had hot sauce in her bag. Why would you say that? You said that because you knew what audience you were talking to right there, and that's not what we want to hear.
Right.
No,
Well, and even in that interview with Charlemagne, he
I
was
didn't hear
doing
this. I gotta
fine.
hear this Charlemagne interview. I didn't know that was a thing.
He said
No, he
you
was
ain't black if you don't vote for him.
right, and it was at the end of the interview. He had actually done fine,
Wait, who
and
said what? Wait,
Joe
what?
and
What?
Biden
then
said
right at
this.
the yeah, go ahead, Shash.
No, Joe Biden said this. He said you're not black if you don't vote for me.
Yeah, he did,
Oh
but that was a week ago, and a lot has happened since then.
Right.
no. Oh God.
But it's like, why
I
would
mean,
you do that? Who's your campaign manager?
Yeah,
Barack didn't hit you up and say, bro, like, no.
No, no.
yeah, and he's gonna, just like Trump, he's gonna say some other stupid shit. So I just hope that people the people who are going to vote for Trump, they're going to vote for him. But the people who are undecided, I truly hope see how he's handled the pandemic, how politicized that became, and how he's clearly mishandled all of this. And if that doesn't sway you, then I don't know what will.
Well, like you said, it's just being so divisive, on purpose.
Do you think this is? I mean, and Stretch, this is probably. Do you think, in your opinion, this is enough to get more a higher percentage of black vote like out? And do you in?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a way to tell, but just in your opinion, is this something that would drive people in November?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The numbers have consistently gone up.
Well, what's even going to be the issues at this point? What are going to be? We're not talking about climate change anymore.
No, but I mean, there's going to be some, because we're still going to be dealing with the pandemic. There's a whole other set of what happens if he loses and half of the population voted by mail. Good luck at figuring that one out and what he's going to say at that point.
Well, Bill Maher has a thing where he says if Trump loses, he's not leaving.
I know it's a joke, but he kind of believes it.
He doesn't think it's a joke. He's been saying this.
He can think what he wants. I mean, he loses, someone else is moving in, bro. Like, there's not enough room in this White House.
Right, but what he's consistently said, and I don't think he means it as a joke, is Trump says, "Oh, I have the tough people on my side. I have the police and the military and the bikers." Inexplanably, I don't know what the bikers have to do with anything, but
he got the Hell's Angels on his side, the Outlaws.
Who's gonna, if Trump's not like he's barricaded in there, like he's gonna say it's an inauthentic election, that there are irregularities if he loses, that the mail. He's already been saying a million.
Yes, he's already planting that seed. He's been planting that seed for a while. Like it's.
Look, man.
And then
Mayor Giuliani tried that same shit with 9/11. And they said, absolutely not. Get the fuck out. So,
yeah.
No, if he gets voted out, he's going to be voted out, and someone else is going to step in and take over.
I think if he loses, though, inevitably, there will be some Republican who will take his playbook and run with it.
I don't know. You don't think that they want to get shit back to like what they actually think?
I hope so. I hope so.
I would hope there's enough shame over there about how he's handled their party.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's even they don't think that, like I said, this is where it gets to the point where it's like the people who do know better should be ashamed of themselves for allowing it to get to this point. And this is not even what I think Republicans think that their party should be.
No.
I've seen so many people, not so many, enough where I'm just like, how is that even possible, that have defended his little PR stunt in front of the church. Like, what do you mean? Like, and then like say he's a man of God, and the man doesn't pray, he doesn't go to church, he doesn't do any of those things, and they're convinced, like, that I don't even know how that works. But like they've defended that, like, just blatantly ridiculous. Just it was it made me angry and I laughed at the same time because I was like, what just happened? And it looked so staged because it was. And there's people, and his people will, they'll defend it. They'll defend it and say, I didn't see anything wrong with that. He was just simply saying that, we need to follow the Bible, and because he does, but it's what's that?
But how can so many people who consider themselves like religious and they believe in God and Bible and this and that, is there a guy who less embodies like what the Bible is theoretically about than Trump? Like cheating on your wife, hating your neighbor, hating minorities, anybody who's not you, cheating as far as finances go, all this other kind of stuff. Like what? I mean, how do people still reconcile this with he holds up a Bible and that means he's religious? Like how?
I don't know. Don't know,
Yeah, I
but
don't have the answer to that.
yeah, I mean,
There's
it's
there's no Bundesliga this week. I would just say to conclude everything, rest in peace, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, all the other people who are too long of a list to name, and unfortunately, all this kind of stuff. I just wanted to get. I had a ton of thoughts I wanted to get out there, and hopefully you guys got to say what you did too. And hopefully, um, we don't forget in a week or two, and things go back to normal. Hopefully this is not. Hopefully this is not just another one of these conversations that we have to end up having again and again. And we'll see. I don't know. I'm. I don't know. Whatever you guys think.
I appreciate the way you guys used your platform tonight, and thanks for having me on.
thank you guys. I appreciate you both.